Hello, Yash. What's up?
गुड गुड मॉर्निंग सेशन हो गया.
Morning session done. आज बस पापा को ट्रेन कर रहा था मैं अपने. No, I didn't have anybody else. And yeah, just got back home. I पहले सोच रहा था I will do this call from the studio only, but then ran out of battery. Didn't have any internet, so I came home and now I've set up. I've messaged Akhil also. In case he wants to join. He does want to join. In case he's free to join, he had asked me a very good question yesterday. So he sent me a voice note asking that he was reading up on complexity and complex systems, and um, like it's been what he read everywhere was that with complex systems, predictability becomes an issue. Like you can't predict the future because things are so complex. But in his, when he thinks about it in terms of people and training people, he thinks that there is a certain degree of predictability. कुछ चीजें predict जरूर हो सकती है. Like that's what he can. That is what is apparent to him, versus something else that he was reading. So he was asking me what my views are on that, and I thought that will go like really well with what happened with you yesterday.
In terms of positive things or negative things in
In
acute.
in terms of both, like positive things as in terms of adaptations that you can create through training, and in terms of I think he did mean negative also, now that I think about it. But yeah, I was thinking that you can't, there is no absolute, like you can neither turn a blind eye towards unpredictability and say that aisa hi hoga and you just do that in training, and then something uncertain does end up happening and you're absolutely not prepared for it. And neither can you say that cheeze to unpredictable hai, so might as well just go with the flow and do whatever and not prepare at all. So dono cheeze, like it's not either or, it's just like understanding that there will be a certain degree of unpredictability that no matter what you do, you will not be able to prepare for. If you like, if an earthquake happens, or if a flight crashes into the ground that you're playing on, you're going to die. And who can kind of prepare for that? That's like the extreme of the bell curve of unpredictable events that can happen. But there is a degree of things that do happen, like an injurious crash, or some random player clashing into you, or for just simply rolling your ankle the wrong way within microseconds and you snap something. So but oh yeah, at the same time, saying that, a good example would be where a lot of people will just say that you need to train with a straight back, move with a straight back. If you're squatting, doing even things like a battle rope, you need to do it with a straight back. So you're always having this straight back approach, and you're saying that the discs might get compressed or bulge on one side, that's why you cannot bend the spine. But then you go out and play a sport and you find your spine in a very weird position, and you encounter a stress that your spine was not prepared for. Then it's going to make the world of a difference अगर आप वो positions and वो चीजें training में train कर रहे थे, versus आपने बिल्कुल भी नहीं करा. आपने rule set कर दिया कि back is meant to be straight, it's not meant to bend at all. And then you end up, the injury that you end up incurring on yourself is going to be much more difficult to come out of. So वही है. That's what. And I saw your message yesterday. I saw what you were doing with the kids. And just to give a little context, by the way, I'm also recording this because I thought we can just put it up on YouTube also. But feel no pressure to not talk about anything or talk about anything. It's all cool. But yeah, you were saying.
During today's session, I was doing this like multi drills.
Yes.
There are some multi shuttle drills, right?
And give us some context. What happened?
Like multi drills, just general multi drills, and I'm moving speed. The coach is hitting the shuttles, and I have to move speed. And I was thinking about some of the plyometric drills I did few days back, and today was also a plyometric session, but the same thing. They were doing box jumps, just plain box jumps, right? So I I don't follow the coach's program. I do my own stuff. तो हुआ क्या कि my friend who's like not equal to me but somewhat on my level, he was doing box jumps and he landed with a slump like this thup se. So coach told him that use your core, and don't land with a slump. But again, we play, you could literally hear like a 5 kg or 10 kg med ball after we land while smashing. You could compare it with a full force slam with a 10 kg med ball. That's the magnitude of pressure that goes through our leg, and we're preparing for this with some dumb stuff like this. Now you don't have to slump your legs. Soft landing, soft landing. The fuck is soft landing? There is no soft landing in badminton. So, and another thing I thought that when blue pill is avoiding the movement itself, drill itself, or the posture itself, it is causing us the problem. And red pill is like again the anti-fragile thing. We are unpredictable, and we don't know what will happen. So let's prepare ourselves by doing the stuff that we do, that we may encounter in our sports, right? But again, the thing is, we're doing, like, suppose talking about simple spinal flexion, bend or something like that, loading up the spinal flexion. In the recent years, 1 or 2 years, this has been a very big jump for all of us.
Yes.
But the more we train spinal flexion, this is just a possibility. This is just a possibility that came into my mind while I was doing this multi-drill. Yeah, I'm becoming more and more efficient in transferring, like letting the body transfer that force in that position, spinal flexion position. So I'm becoming more, basically, it's conducting more of that force.
Yes. Yes.
We're training for it. We're loading up with 15 kgs, 20 kgs, 15, increasing it. And eventually there will be a time that when we'll be like that Jefferson curl we do, we'll be curling it like with 80 kgs. But again, our potential also goes up with that
Yes.
thing. Our potential goes up, and we apply that position. It's not that like we do the 80 kg and we won't be able to apply that in our sport, or the task demand, whatever task demand we have. You're doing grappling, and like some move may be there where you have like such compressed bag that you can't avoid it.
Yeah.
The more you train for it, the more your potential goes up. So
Absolutely.
I think the strain not completely goes down, or like the unpredictability not completely goes away. It stays there because we're becoming more efficient at it, to use it, not just to protect ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Side bends and shoulder stuff, like we're doing extreme shoulder extension and flexion in our training to like suppose that arm bar thing
Yeah.
in wrestling. So it's not that if we do train in that position for certain like repetitions or isometrics, which not everyone does regularly, but you are doing it, you are becoming more efficient at it, to use it, not just to protect your hand while doing the set thing. I think, I don't know if it makes complete sense, but I think the more we use it, the more our potential goes up. Not just to
No,
protect ourselves, but to use it in 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 the scenario, like the scenario which we are preparing for.
no, absolutely, absolutely. I think I there is actually like do you know about the physical stress theory?
I've read some of it, not
Okay.
completely dived.
So it's basically it's a theory. I mean, and like all theories, it's going to have its shortcomings. It has a lot of pros because basically everything we kind of should everything that we kind of reference to in terms of performance, which you can consider as your potential, and injury rehab, and just in terms of injury prevention also, which you can consider as like the protection part of training. So both potential and protection, both aspects of expression, both aspects of training. Uh, the physical stress theory will tell you that there are 5 predictable outcomes that you can kind of predict. So it does reference to predictability, like coming back to Akhil's question. that are things completely unpredictable or are they absolutely predictable? So they're neither completely unpredictable nor are they absolutely predictable, but there is a degree of predictability that you have. So the shortcoming of this theory is that the absolute, okay, I'll give you some context. So before, what are the 5 predictable outcomes? So basically, this theory first of all defines stress as a stimulus, and it's a composite value of 3 things: intensity, duration, and direction. So a stress can be very intense and it can be very short in duration, as it usually is if it's very intense, and that could be a certain amount of stimulus that you're putting on the body, versus a stress could be like really long in duration but very less in intensity, but that's also going to be a high magnitude stimulus that you put on the body. So it's a composite value, right? So depending on how much stress you're putting on the tissues of the body, everything that you have, your bones, your ligaments, cartilage, tendons, everything, that tissue is going to respond in a certain way. It is either going to not do anything. If the stress that you put on it, it's already accommodated to that stress, it's not going to change at all. If the stress that you're putting on it is less than what it is accommodated to, then it does not need to hold on to the adaptation that it's currently holding on to. And it's going to start losing those adaptations because
This second scenario you talked about, can you repeat it again?
second scenario. Okay. So first is the maintenance level, right? Like at a certain level of stress being applied on the body does not give a damn about it because it's already accommodated to it. So it's not going to do anything, right? That stress is going to be like okay for it. Or under a certain threshold, which fixed value is not defined. That's the shortcoming of this theory. You can never pinpoint a number that this is the newtons under which, so basically what happens is like that value is not defined, but under a certain threshold, when you continually apply a amount of stress to the body is going to go through a detraining effect. It is going to lose its adaptations that it is currently holding on to, the maintenance level that it's currently creating, that's to handle a certain amount of stress. But if that stress is not there, then it is going to have a detraining effect, right? Those tissues are going to lose adaptations. A little above that maintenance threshold, it is going to gain adaptation, so that the next time you put the stress on it, first time एक tissue पे एक बहुत ज़्यादा stress डाला that it was not used to, it's going to end up expending more energy than it is used to of expending, right? So what will the tissue do? The tissue will make sure, since law of conservation of energy, since we want to conserve energy, it will do everything it can to make sure that the next time the same amount of stress आए, अगली बार इतनी energy expend now, right? Survival is the main priority, conserving energy is the main priority. It's going to adapt. Above a certain threshold, the stress can be injurious, right? And there are values like on both ends which could like cause tissue death. Like एक level, एक direction और intensity or duration of stress होता है जो अगर आप apply करते रहो, you're going to die. The tissue is going to start dying. One example of this is the Ironman Goa just happened in Goa, of course. One young guy, he collapsed at the end of the race. Just before reaching the training line, collapsed, died. Why? Because of whatever reason, his body, that stress, yeah, he died. So that stress, you could think of as a stress that's not intense, so to speak. He's not moving at maximal velocities, neither is he lifting maximal load.
I got it. The stress itself isn't that
Intense.
Intense, but the stimulus which is
It's
like
it's a
being
lot
it's a lot, yeah.
because of the
Got it.
time component. So it
Time
was that stimulus is above that, not even above that injury level. It's above that death level, that tissue death level, where the tissue he got what is known as rhabdomyolysis, which is, if I'm not wrong, the red blood cells in the body just start killing themselves. Mass death, mass cell death. So that's a level of stimulus above which the tissue dies. If you fall down from a building, you don't get injured. The stress is so much, the intensity of the stress is so much, the stimulus that your body ends up taking is so much that the tissue straight up dies. Now, I like to think about training in terms of protection first of all, because and potential also, because this theory has like 10 principles which are very easy to understand. It's like the easiest thing in the world to read up on. It's a three page manual, physical stress theory. The shortcome,
Does it also incorporate this neurological adaptations with these levels, like the detraining effect first, like
yes,
we're
yeah,
doing the stuff
yeah,
at the maintenance level, the
yes,
detraining effect happens. We're
yes,
doing, and the second level, and the third level where mass tissue death is considered. So does
Yes.
it also this include neurological adaptations with these levels?
There is always going to be neurology involved because neurology is what acutely responds to anything. That is what is perceiving anything. But, huh?
Does it talk about it actually? Like there are some.
It's referencing to the physiology, it's referencing to the musculoskeletal system, so to speak. So it's talking about the tissues, right? So,
Okay.
and like the response that the tissue will have. So, like how will the physiology respond acutely and chronically to stress? So, 5 levels: maintenance level, positive adaptation level, negative adaptation level, injury levels on both ends, and then you've got the tissue death level. So, one of the principles that this theory has is that the past history, or what is actually called as the contractile history of a tissue, right? In If you immediately think about a tissue's past and versus like the near past as well, if the tissue has been stimulated with stress, that's going to cause an effect where all the thresholds move up a little bit. So the next time that you apply stress, it will have a higher maintenance threshold, it will have a higher injury threshold, higher positive adaptation threshold, and that is the reason why that is basically what is forming the basis for the overloading principle. Where why do we need to train more and more? It's because if your
Yeah.
tissue has a past of contraction, of being loaded with a stress, then the next time if you put the same stress on it, it will be prepared for it because its maintenance thresholds have risen. So you need to do more and more and more and more because the tissue's threshold is also going higher and higher and higher and higher. So yes, the potential also increases, and yes, you also are a little bit more protected, just in the sense that more will be required for you to get injured. You will need to apply a greater stress on the tissue to injure it. So it's not just that we are saying this just because we want to be anti-fragile, just because we want to develop that mindset. And there is a physiological principle in place that has been, theorized, it has been hypothesized, it has its shortcomings. You don't have exact values for these, but you can kind of predict, you can kind of qualify how training should be done. And I was also thinking about that this whole thought process of, and I'm sorry if I'm going on a rant, but uh, a good example of trying to understand this is that one school of thought is that you need to prepare your athletes for the task demands, right? So what ends up happening is, like, let's talk about cycling, because I know you recently went out on like a pretty long cycling ride, so you can relate with it, right? So when essentially when you look at this, typically you would see somebody with an arch with a flex spine, right? The entire curvature of the spine is flexed, and they are like that for multiple hours on end. So this would be a stimulus that is not like, if we just try to imagine the spinal load, like the spinal compression, it's a stimulus that's not high in intensity, but it's extremely long in time duration, right? Not high in intensity, but extremely long in time duration. So the stimulus is very high. So now a coach will think, okay, this is the task demand. Now I need to train the athlete for the task demand, right? So what they end up doing is they end up doing more of that. So they will do something like a Jefferson curl ISO or a plank ISO for really long durations, because in their mind this is meeting the task demand of the athlete sport. But here's my argument against that. So basically, if I look at 1 week ka time spread of an athlete, and I'm seeing that this athlete is already spending 20 hours in a spinal flexion, position in their training, in their
Yeah.
competition, they are already there. That is the stress they are already giving their tissue. So I need a solid reason to do more of that, because see what happens is, like, there is a total set of physical qualities. How
Hmm.
fast can you move your body? How much load you can yield or resist to? Right.
Hmm.
Similarly, you've got like how long can you endure a low intensity stress? If they already have 20 hours of enduring a low intensity stress, right? So this is the holistic center between all the physical qualities. One of the physical
Hmm.
qualities is already being taken care of. One type of stress I am already putting on the body. So why will I do just more of this and pull them more towards this one quality more and more, just because quote unquote it is supposed to meet the task demand of their sport? Until and unless I get a feedback from them that they are facing some constraints in their ability to keep their spine flexed for that long, I will not touch that, because that has already been taken care of. So for me, it's going to make more sense to expose this athlete to a spinal flexion maximal load and a spinal flexion movement done at maximal velocity. Because when I take care of that, I bring them back to the holistic center, right? I'm taking care of what is not being done in training. And that is what I start filling up my time with. And then I consider, okay, how much time does this actually take? How much time does bringing them back to the holistic center and training maximal spinal flexion load and spinal flexion done at maximal velocity? All this training is taking, let's say, 20 minutes per session, 3 sessions in a week. So that time has to be accounted for first. Then I need to consider how much recovery time will that take. That will allow me to understand how many sessions in a week I need to do and how much time else, how much more time I have left for to do everything else. So that's going to be my primary concern. And sorry, so that's how programming has to be looked at, and that I feel like is what will help you prepare your athlete in a way where first of all they end up realizing more of their potential, because just to meet the task demands you're not putting them all the time in the long duration. You're training them like an endurance athlete. You're bringing them to their center. You're training the maximal qualities, and they are, at least according to the physical stress theory, we are exposing them to all different kinds of stressors in training. So when they do end up, like let's say they fall off their cycle, fall on their back goes through massive compression. If they were their worst case scenario, Murphy's law ends up manifesting itself. Whatever could go wrong does go wrong, and they end up just spasming spraining their spine. It will take a lot more if they were training maximal spinal flexion load and maximal velocity spinal flexion. It will take a lot more to injure them than it would if you were just training them like an endurance athlete, because you're supposed to meet the task demands in training. So yeah, the physical stress theory, great theory to read upon. Like it's sorry, what?
Brings us back to this gold statement that your training is your prehab. You don't need to do anything else to do the prehab.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I mean, we can both agree that there is a huge disconnect in how training is done and how, like, what would be like an efficient way to train for a sport, right? And this, like, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but then again, like, there are coaches that will, not want you to expose your, especially youth athletes to a lot of chaos in training. But at the same time, they are going out, and youth athletics and especially team sports, probably one of the most brutal sports environments ever. Because not only are kids a little bit less conscientious than adults, like when you're an adult, you think thrice about harming somebody else. But youth athletes, teenagers, they are just so vicious when they are playing sports. They don't think twice about that. Team sport, especially team sport, contact sport environment, one of the most brutal environments ever. Like, I come from a football background. I know some of the things that go down, and the mindset that your average footballer, 14-year-old, 15-year-old footballer is going to have. And I know, like, there's huge downside risks involved with that. And if first of all, you have to acknowledge that. If you're not acknowledging that, that is the first red flag. Let's call that a red flag. But if you're acknowledging that, then you cannot, pussyfoot your way around training. You have to consider that if you're training 10 kids, some of them might feel a little achy after training. Sometimes joints might hurt, but that is nothing but feedback. That is nothing but giving you a feedback about what that particular kid needs to train more of.
Yeah. There is nothing wrong with that ache. There is nothing wrong with that pain that comes after the session. It's just a feedback their body is giving. The kids are not that smart to make excuses. As like the same scenario is happening with me. Like मेरा नी अभी बहुत ज्यादा डिस्कम्फर्ट में राइट नी like extreme pain है अभी मुझे actually. But again, if I say this to my coach, it's just an excuse. I'm making an excuse to not train. But for for the kids I train, this is not an excuse at all. Yesterday a girl came with a left knee issue because for the last 3 days they were doing like left leg landing. A certain movement is there, so we were working upon it, and it's very natural that yeah, that leg is going through a lot of stress, and it will, like after a while it will show up some symptoms that the load is actually exceeding than the limit, and it's
Exactly.
okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So I just acknowledged it, yes, okay, you don't need to do the fitness today, you don't need to do a lot of intense strokes today, you don't need to do the routines today, you just do the simpler, the lower intensity things. And that's and that's why we are here. Otherwise any player can do anything. They can come here, they can hit 1,000 smashes a day, right? There is no regulatory thing inside their heads, and like in the external environment there is no regulatory authority or some particular you know uh, what do you say, command. So
Yes.
that's why I am to regulate it, and to regulate it in a positive way, not making them feel bad. That's what my goal was, and it is.
No, that's freaking amazing, and that's why like I like you're doing great work. First of all, like you have to know that because and I just don't say that because I have a bias towards you because we have been friends for a while. But exactly what you said. You are operating as a regulator. You are not there to define rules and put people inside boxes because that's going to fundamentally, not respect the athlete's individuality, the potential that they have, the shortcomings that they have, and everything. Right? You are nothing. A coach is essentially nothing but an input to the training system that controls the parameters of this training system in a way so that favorable outcomes can emerge, and then you have a degree of control over those favorable outcomes. So you got to acknowledge that as a coach, and you also have to understand your job as a coach is to regulate the environment, is to create the conditions so that potential can emerge, and challenges can emerge because that is what is going to show you the path towards the potential, but never to set rules to count, just specify this and then put your athletes in a box. And that is, I feel like, for all the coaches, this is rising. See, it's like it's four of us right now, it's going to be 40 very soon, it's going to be 400 very soon after that. But more of this is going to happen, that we need to understand what our job role as coaches is. The old paradigm is just dying. I mean, I feel like, I personally like to believe like this is going to be the last generation, or maybe in our generation also we'll kind of have to be the first ones through the wall, do the hard work. But after us, there should be very less of those coaches, that from of that with that mentality of trying to define specific rules, and then have your athletes put inside those boxes. Because see, it's like you will not stand the test of time if you operate like that. Because if you do operate like that, you will maybe have a prodigal athlete in your arsenal. You will create one good athlete, which athlete, if you're training them like that, they might not have a long career anyway. So, but when we understand our job role as regulators, as people that only have parametric control over the system, but not full control over the system, only then we'll be able to see a lot of athletes, a lot of good potential emerge out of the pool of, people that we are leading and that we are responsible for, basically. And when people have a look at their own systems, their own practices, and when they realize, okay, I am going through this, I have very few good athletes and a lot of people suffering, and I want to be a person that has a better distribution of successful outcomes, then people are going to start thinking about it in these terms and actually think about complexity, non-linearity, unpredictability, and all of these things, anti-fragility. And that's just the future, is what my opinion is.
Like there is one that idea bank thing you talked about, right? And one very significant idea that came to my mind is what I learned from my coaching experience, from when I started, from where I am now, and from where I am going to be. So from when I started, it's very natural that a kid is not doing a particular stroke. Let's say there is a stroke in badminton called a toss. So like there are kids who are 7, 8 years old, 10 years old, and they can't hit a toss properly. Now the natural response is for a coach just to yell at them, "Hey, what you're doing? Hold this correctly. Uh, hit hard. Try hitting hard." Even if we think about it in a way like a constraint based way, yeah, you have to hit inside this box. I gave them an external constraint, but still, they are kids. They are not as uh, cognitive as we are. Okay, so just yelling at them, they won't work. I have to deep dive inside myself. Yes, acknowledge it. Yeah, that particular kid is not able to hit, and in the same place some kid of the same age, same height, you know, same build, he's able to hit it. What's the difference? There is, like, I can't do anything about the difference itself, but what I can do is make the kid feel that no, you are not wrong here. I am not letting my anger upon you dictate that you are wrong. You are doing whatever you can. It's my job to make him do the stuff in a way that he can improve. So I started learning this. It was a bitter experience. At first, I'm a very aggressive person, like an aggressive coach. Not in all terms, but sometimes. So first few days, I yelled a lot. I yelled a lot. I acknowledged it, but I yelled a lot. Then something clicked in my mind. There is one very good coach here, who I can say that I intern under him. So this batch which I take coaching for, I intern under him, and he's the perfect example of, you know, programming or this formation of routines according to the individual athlete. This same athlete, if I am doing this, I am doing something wrong. My friend, which has like he has the same build and everything. Most of the things are similar, but he's doing that right. Now, what can I do to make that thing or do that thing better from my current level? That's what I learned from him. He was like so calm, and he was calm and he got the work done. I learned that from him. That yes, kids are not everyone wants to do good. Everyone wants to hit a good stroke. Everyone wants to hit a good smash. It's not that they're purposely doing the mistake, and I need to acknowledge it. It's a very bitter experience for someone who doesn't have emotional control, because it only comes with their control.
Yeah.
Like continuous journey. The more you think about it, the more we introspect, the control comes.
Absolutely.
So, like sometimes I feel like I come with a plan. Like, today I'll make the kids do this thing. But again, some kids are not. They are not in this particular mood to do said thing, which was fun for them a few days ago. Like a particular drill, let's say it was fun for them a few days ago, but today they don't feel like doing it, and there is nothing bad with that. I just need to change it. Today they need to do just the regular warm up they want to do. They feel like jogging. Yes, go for it. But today, next day they want to do something fun. Okay, I'll think about it. I'll do that. Just because there is a plan, I don't I don't need to actually execute it just to stay disciplined, just to prove their mentality. Hard work is everything, discipline is everything. A very typical thing in badminton is skipping. In martial arts as well, skipping ropes. Right? Kids are playing 4 hours every day. They are actively moving almost 2 hours out of 4 hours, actively, like in a fast pace. There is a lot of sub-maximal contacts already happening. Why do I need to make them do this double skipping ropes just for conditioning? I can do something else.
Yep.
They're at the age where they don't need to do that much of endurance. Their on-court time takes care of it.
Yep.
I just need to, again, that same thing, the spinal compression thing, flexion thing we talked about. They're already spending time in that position. Why do I need to do more stuff in that position itself? Instead, I can do like higher intensity and a very very low intensity thing that may help them.
Got the point, bro.
Like
That's what's going to bring them back to the holistic center of all the physical abilities. So if
I
your
don't,
kids are, if they're
I
all,
never make them do,
yeah, go
like
on, go on.
maximum, very like in a sport like badminton, ankle, knee, and hamstring and low back, they get strained a lot. Like regularly, an athlete comes up with a, shin splints, shin splints also. So instead of making them do more extensive plyometrics in the name of preparing their tissues, which is good, like in a general category for a general population person, that's good for it. Like there is nothing wrong. But for them, the context is different. I expose them to a very intense bounding session, like very short, very intense, very few reps. Like this is a badminton court which length is like 14 feet or something.
Mm.
So in how many 15 feet distance? That's it. And we're going to do this for 3 or 4 minutes. That's it. And or when you feel like you're slowing down, I'm I'm giving the control to them instead of just making a box like, yeah, you have to do these many sets and reps, repetition, 6 set. No. Some athlete may be able to do even more than that, but some may not be able to do even 2 sets.
Yeah.
So I try to, like in group settings, you talked about it yesterday, like try to differentiate and program accordingly. So in group settings, I feel like during the last 3 months I've coached, I felt that we have to program in some way that the athletes can have the control, and I'm just there to
Regulate.
determine their individual levels and stop them when I see them. Yeah, they're not doing well. They're not feeling it.
Absolutely. That's key. That's key. Understanding your role as a regulator in a training environment is not just good, like it's good for your athletes, and that's what it is about, right? It's about them and them doing their best. So yeah, and I hope like we can get Akhil on a call as well soon and talk about more complexity with him, because he had a great question and he's been very curious about unpredictability and complex systems as well, and he has a very similar format to you wherein he is also responsible for taking care of a bunch of athletes, and it always changes. So for me, I have never
What with
his nature of work.
like sport?
What
Which sport?
sport? It's actually multi-sport. He's like involved in a SNC program in a school, and so the school has multiple sports. So I think he's taking care of like multiple groups of athletes of volleyball, basketball, and things of that nature. But yeah, that's why I was telling you that you need to differentiate between single and like things change when you're training one person versus when you're training multiple people, because I have had a lot of experience training people one on one, like kids one on one, but never kids of, or the sizes of groups that you are training. For example, 10 kids at a time. I saw like 10-15 kids you were taking care of at that time. So yeah, things change wherein for them you have to set a common ground, and you need to have that kind of parametric control where the kid, the best kid in the class and the kid with the lowest ability in the class, they both need to have a session that is justified for them. If you set like one set rule, then some people will benefit from it, but the kid for whom that is just, they can probably go on the entire day doing that, they are wasting their time in that session. And at the same time, there could be a kid in that session that could get injured from that same stimulus. So that way, you need to set a good common ground and have that parametric control where you know when to end things for which individual.